Hi, thank you for coming. When I wrote to Rosalie about collaboration, I didn't know Taylor Swift is coming. If I know, I would maybe 1 week before or 1 week after. So, but luckily they perform at night. Okay, I'm Rosa. I'm the founder and artistic director of the Vancouver Cantonese Opera, and we incorporated in year 2000. So this is 24 years for me. And I'd like to introduce to you Stephen Atkins, our co-playwright, and he will be also our theater director. And he is very famous. He just came back from Lithuania. Okay, anyway. So thank you, and he will give you what we're going to do in our opera, The Awakening. This is the second fusion opera created by the Vancouver Cantonese Opera. The first one was called The Prop Master Stream. Why we do fusion opera? Because I've been trying very hard for 20 years, trying to preserve Cantonese opera in Vancouver and promote it to the mainstream audience. But I don't think I was successful. Because first of all, there are many challenges, like the Cantonese opera are too long. 3 hours, 4 hours. Who want to sit there 4 hours? Especially if you don't speak the language, you have to watch the subtitles for so long. So for 20 years, I hardly have any increase in audience from the mainstream. So then because of the pandemic, that was 2020, so nothing to do. And I thought, okay, nothing to do. Maybe I should just jump off the plane without a parachute and try to create a fusion opera. It has been in my mind for a long time, creating an opera about Guan Wakun, my friend. He was indigenous and a Chinese father and indigenous mother. And also he was a Cantonese opera performer and also a prop master. So that was to me, is extremely rare. When you look at him, he looks like an indigenous gentleman, but when he spoke, he talked Tai Sang, so he didn't speak English. But then 2020, I started writing the script, and then we presented in 2020 the first time at the Annex Theatre, and then the second remand is at the Vancouver Playhouse. So now we're going forward to The Awakening, the second fusion opera. So first of all, I think everybody knows about the Chinese-Canadian Exclusion Act. So I'm not going to, first of all, I'd like to we are bringing you to this event from Vancouver, BC, Canada, on the beautiful unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. 首先我喺呢度多謝 Musqueam、Squamish 同埋 Tsleil-Waututh 的部族，俾我哋可以喺呢個美麗嘅原住民土地上進行今日嘅現場直播。These are all our sponsors. Without them, we would not be able to go forward with the awakening. But this is only part of the. We still need a lot of funding for the creation and the finished development. Okay, so these are all about Exclusion Act. So I would like to ask the young people there, do you know the history of the Chinese Exclusion Act? Okay, so it's before in the 18th century, they start charging head tax on Chinese people who came to Canada. So eventually they went up to $500 Canadians. So that is about at least a century ago. That's a lot of money. So then, and then in 1923, they started the Chinese Exclusion Act. No Chinese was allowed to come in, only some diplomats, special people. And then also Chinese people were confined because of the marginalization and the segregations. They were confined in Chinatown. They were not allowed to live outside Chinatown. So because I came from Hong Kong in 1975, I did not study any Canadian history. I didn't know anything about Canadian history until I started the prop master stream. So that was the first time I went to the internet and searched for history. So I was really surprised. And I really felt the empathy of the Chinese at that time. So, but the awakening here that we are going to produce is not to think about how they were being, and also the racism. I just want to celebrate the decisions to go forward and try to repeal the law. And also in our awakening, not just about hatred or anything. I just want people to know how hard they tried. And also I also delve into like what the young people at that time do. Like, of course, they work and they went to school, although they were only allowed to go to certain school. They were only allowed to take certain subjects. But they still play, right? Young people, they play. So we also look into how they play too. Okay, so these are about the Exclusion Act. And it was introduced in 1923. So at that time, we have a very strange society in Chinatown. It's called the Bachelor Society. Because when the Chinese people came at the beginning, is mostly because they were in China, life was very hard for them, and they wanted to make life better for the family. So they were persuaded by many Westerners came to China, because in Canada at that time they were looking for laborers to build a Canadian railway and other hard labor. So they said that if you came to Canada or North America, you will find a lot of gold. You will become rich. So they came, but then because of that, after the Exclusion Act, no more Chinese were allowed. They were not even allowed to bring their family over. First of all, because they didn't have money. So that created a society with many, many men, no women. Okay, so they were confined to the Chinatown, and separation of the families, and marginalization is they were treated as second-class citizens. And there were many things they could not do. They could not go to swimming pool. They were not allowed to go to, even if they were admitted in university, they were not allowed to study medicine, law, and engineer. So they were only allowed to study something arts. But not many people have the money to go to. So it was like they have some elementary school in Chinatown, but they were not allowed to go outside Chinatown to go to school. And so in Chinatown, but because of the Exclusion Act, the Chinese communities still were very alive and active and responsive. They stood up for themselves. And also the community resilience. And because everybody lived in Chinatown, there were rich merchants that were very successful in their trade, and there were poor people who just came to Canada, were hard labor. But because they live in the same area, Chinatown, so they almost become one body. They try to make Chinatowns a better place to live. And then in return, they were cultural and social bonds through community organization and mutual support. And like in the Broadmaster Stream, because the Chinese people at that time were discriminated, same thing as the indigenous people. So they were kind of become very friendly with each other. And also because of the Bachelor Society, many men had family in China, but they were not able to bring them over. So after many, many years of loneliness, they make friends, and some of them form family. So just like WWII, in real life, his father was Chinese, and then they form a family with an indigenous woman, and they actually, WWII has, according to him, but it's not confirmed because at that time when I met him, I didn't really ask him about his life. But I heard from his landlord that he had a sister and maybe a brother. So when he was alive, I never asked him about his life, so I didn't know whether he was successful in finding his mother. But the only thing I knew is he didn't speak English. He only spoke Toy San. So imagine someone with a face of indigenous and then didn't speak English, only Chinese, so life was very hard for them. And also I think he was very lonely. But the only thing is his passion is in Cantonese opera. So he went to Chinatown and always went to those musical society and sat in the corner of the society. That's how I met him. I was like, once a week I went to Chinatown to this WWII, a musical society, and I saw him sitting at the corner of the room. Nobody talked to him, and he just sat there. I think because he had a feeling that he belonged, his love for Cantonese opera. Okay, so like racial categorization and territorial confinement, it makes them, even between the wealthy and the poor, have a strong attachment to each other. And this is Yip Sing, one of the very famous Chinese merchants. And many of the Chinese merchants in Chinatown, they were very devoted to make the Chinatown a better place for everyone. So like for him, he used his own money to improve the neighborhood's safety and also the water system to make it better for everybody. Yip Sing, another wealthy merchant, was very important in the Chinatown, because they also formed benevolent associations to try to make reform and try to lobby the government. And also because of their successful business, they also had like some connection with the main communities, the Western. So some of them are sympathetic to the situation of the Chinese in the Chinatown. So eventually, in the 1947, they appealed the Chinese Exclusion Act. And mainly it's because of the combined efforts of the whole community. Okay, so now I'd like you to meet the mastermind behind the awakening. And this is Stephen Atkins.
Thank you for inviting me to come here. It's an amazing place. I'm very bashful because I've never been called a mastermind in my whole life. I was instructing at Capilano College, or Capilano University up on the North Shore, and I have a theater history course. And one of the units that I have in my theater history course is an incredibly, obnoxiously condensed and reductive week that we spend on non-Western theater traditions, which is supposed to include Japanese theater, Chinese theater, Sanskrit theater, ridiculously reduced. And I just felt that this was so impoverished that I wanted to have a practitioner who did Chinese opera to come and do a workshop for my students. And Rosa very graciously accepted my call for help. And since then, we've just been bantering back and forth on how to make this a better situation for the Cantonese opera. So Rosa's energy is just infectious, and I'm very happy to be along for the ride. In this little brief unit, we're going to be talking about fusion opera and what could that be. I'm going to give you a little story pitch about what the story is so far for the awakening, and just an idea of what we have coming ahead. And I just wanted to say right away that we don't have a real formula or a plan. We're basically casting off into each other's imaginations and cultural backgrounds. And I have a quote here, which can't really be seen, but one can't really discover new oceans unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. So I'm kind of giving up a lot of my ideas and my ego about my theater tradition, and we're just sort of blending things together. As I said before, I'm Dr. Stephen Atkins. I'm a faculty member at Capilano University, and I thought I should put this up here because just a couple of weeks ago I was granted a small grant to release me from some teaching at the university, and the research office has given me a little bit of funds to hire some student interns to help us out. So a great thank you to Capilano University for their support. So fusion opera. So it could be a dynamic art form that blends the rich traditions of Cantonese opera with music, dance, and other performance styles from diverse cultures. We don't really know what it is yet, and perhaps it will never be fully defined as we collaborate and dynamically form these things from project to project. I've been sort of following the wisdom of this professor in Germany. Her name is Erika Fischer-Licht, and she has written a very, very interesting, long track of scholarship on intercultural theater, and she pointed out a pretty interesting thing about what we call intercultural collaboration. It's usually very binary, and we usually think of it as quite Eurocentric. We think of, at least in a Eurocentric culture, we think of intercultural collaboration as like European culture collaborating with some other people. And I want to say right away that we're here to challenge that. We're here to look at it in the way that Erika Fischer-Licht suggests. And that is any two cultures combining their creative resources and their aesthetic traditions to create a third thing that is possibly transformative for all participants. That's really our goal. It's lofty, and it might take time, but we're being very patient with each other, so it's pretty good. The awakening is set, as Rosa said before, in Vancouver's Chinatown in the years of World War II. Chinese Canadians are persevering with the Chinese Exclusion Act, which is contributing significantly to their communities and continuing to contribute to their communities in spite of the systemic injustice, just in the way that Rosa was saying. These slides are a little bit redundant. They overlap with Rosa's. But basically, the Exclusion Act came out of the head tax, which was established in 1885. And it was designed specifically to exclude Canadian-born Chinese from voting, from having citizenship rights that regular citizens enjoyed, and also from entering professions. So doctors, lawyers, engineers, as Rosa was saying, were off limits. Well, this became a little bit of the thing that shook it up was the war. We had two Canadas. We had Canada for European people and Canada for Chinese people. But the Chinese were initially barred from even enlisting in the war, which would have given them more rights. So what happened was in 1944, a very significant thing happened, and that was that England decided to enter war with Japan. And I think one can read many cynical things into this, which is suddenly people's use was seen, which is something, it's a cynicism that isn't lost on me, and it's something that maybe we want to highlight in this. So as Great Britain commits to the conflict in Japan, Canada was forced to look at itself. And Canada was, of course, one of the Allied forces, and the United States had already begun integrating Chinese Americans into their military forces, which set a precedent that Canada couldn't ignore if they were going to be an ally. The brave souls. So the service of these people highlighted the hypocrisy and catalyzed post-war policy changes, including the repeal of the Exclusion Act eventually, and granting Chinese Canadians the right to vote in 1947. So our story and our plot line is set in this time of upheaval, of conflict, and of hope. And I'm really kind of vibing in with Rosa. Every time we check in with each other, I get a different sense of the emotional landscape of this story. And the sense of hope and the sense of dreams for people, and I think rather really smartly, Rosa has set much of this in the Sing-Q theater. And to me, theater has always been the place where dreams are expressed and hope is manifested. So the political setting is simply the backdrop, really, for a story of friendship, of true love, of self-discovery, and the courage to stake everything on a dream for a better future. So it's really a story about youth. Over 6 acts, the lives of the following characters, who you'll see in the following slides, intertwine, profoundly transforming one another and creating lasting change. Now, I've used AI in my presentation, and I want to make you aware of the fact that I'm fine with using AI as like my doodle pad. I don't really see it as anything that guides or directs my creativity. One thing that I do notice is that I've asked it to deliver me some pictures with the aesthetics of the 1940s. And it's beginning to reveal the biases and the, and the stuff that AI has. So I want you to know that as we go through some of these, the pictures will be saccharine, they will be like really formulated to the 1940s, and for me it's revealing that AI is simply a surface. And what we want to do as artists is to get under that surface and find the flesh and bones of the story. So here we have our main heroes. The main hero is Peony and her friend May, who are two actresses. Peony and May have just immigrated to Canada, and they perform at the Sing Q Theatre. Their journey to a new life is tainted, however, by this looming threat. As many people know of the history of immigration, that there was a very hefty head tax that usually couldn't be paid by the immigrant and had to be sponsored. So they had this very, very big financial debt that they owed a certain person. The other thing that's a very interesting character point for Peony is that she was one of the daughter of a father who was one of the bachelors who left them. So she learned English at a nunnery, at a convent. This is the man who sponsored them, Jack, who has some underworld affiliations, the local crime lord, in fact, with friends in high places. His presence in Chinatown is a dark cloud that puts a pall on the community and the self-esteem of Vancouver's merchants and the residents of Chinatown. And here's our other hero, the romantic hero, James. He's not currently an engineering student. He aspires to be an engineer, but he's taking classes. And he's a student from Calgary, Canadian-born. James is idealistic and a romantic with a deep sense of justice, and he works hard at achieving a good education to build a brighter future for himself and others. But his heart is instantly captured when he sees Peony performing at the Sing Q Theatre, falls instantly in love, even though to his friends, says, no, I'm not really not. His friends from school include Kevin and Connie, his own sister. They are actually a bit of a couple. They're dating right now. So all these characters converge in a scene at the Sing Q Theatre during a performance by Peony and May, but the evening is spoiled by the gangster Jack, who behaves belligerently and taunts Peony and May about knowing the money. And of course, Kevin, and especially James, are quite offended by his behavior, which erupts in kind of like a rumble. There's a kind of a little bit of Grease is going through my head right now, or maybe the West Side Story, you know, with some ideas of using different fight choreographies and musical stylings. But our characters, as Rosa had prompted, we're not dwelling on injustice, we're not dwelling on hate and dismay and so forth. We're dwelling on the fact that these are young people and they live lives, and just as the youth of today, they're obsessed with current technology and the latest crazy music, which includes the radio and jazz. So this is going to lead us to have a swing dance scene in the streets of Chinatown. But we can't ignore the fact that there is this undercurrent, that there is this spirit of change that needs to happen. There's pressure. And from that pressure, eventually comes the need to protest one's rights. Again, it's AI, and everything on there is going to be gibberish. AI doesn't write words, it just makes images. So the protests erupt against this relentless injustice, defying the will of Jack, who is actually benefiting from the fact that most of the people their spirits have been broken. And he can use this, and he can manipulate this community into serving him and his needs. However, there's an unlikely ally. And this is a guy named William. He's from the immigration office. And he comes in and sort of settles down some of the people and proposes this idea that there's some things that are happening in Ottawa, and there might be some opportunities. So he starts to sort of help the community, and he assists them in kind of finding the courage to find other ways of getting what they want, rather than protesting and rather than through this disobedience. So James and Kevin eventually see the opportunity to perhaps enlist as an opportunity to change the world. The sacrifice, of course, is that they have to leave their true loves behind. And it could be a very emotional, an emotional scene, and a very, very interesting point for the characters to reveal their true nature. So I'm not going to give too many more spoilers because there's some more drama to occur in Acts 4 and 5. But one of the things that I believe very strongly in is what I call a web of values, or a network of values when you're creating a story. And it works with linear storytelling, but it also works with music and dance. And rather than thinking of things in terms of a line that the story goes through, we can think of it as a constellation of values that we want to hit on. And so the values that are in this will lead us to ideas of the dramatic situations in the music that we'll create. The values are opposed. There's the axis of the community versus the individual. And we can see that in many different ways, right? A person bemoaning or feeling grieving for their own past versus their commitment to the people around them and to the friends that they're making. Or in Jack, who sees the community as his wedge to make himself successful and wealthy on the backs of others, versus the community that he should be helping out, like the models of the merchants and the very successful wealthy people. There's passion versus indifference, and conflict versus a shared hope, right? So what we hope to do in these scenes and in the music is to have these different themes and counter themes opposing each other and blending with each other to create the story. This is the very first time I've ever written for an opera of any kind, so I'm very, very happy and very lucky to have experts around me who will grow my world and give me a new kind of garden to play in. I'm using a lot of metaphors here. And I find that music is probably a very, very interesting medium rather than simply dialogue or simply storytelling. Music has far more opportunities to employ metaphor effectively. So this is a story, I hope, in a world where, I'm doing the pitch for the movie, where traditions bring people together for a strong future, and a quiet revolution transforms the pain of the past into hope for the future. So looking into the future, as I said before, I feel very good about our collaborative energy that we have so far, because we don't really know what we're doing, but we all have a strong faith in our own backgrounds, but we're not exerting or imposing that on each other. And we're inviting sort of this creative alchemy where distinct elements of two cultures intermingle. My performance culture isn't any one culture. I don't really come from a monolithic thing. My background is that I'm English, I'm a UK citizen, and I'm a permanent resident of Australia. And in going between those two places, I teach here in Vancouver. So my background is very multicultural, and especially in Asia, in Australia rather, it's very Asia forward, Asia facing. And so many of my collaborative opportunities there have been with Chinese and Japanese theater companies and dance companies. So I bring with this, bring to the mix a kind of broad scope of references and a willingness to play and to have fun. And I have a very strong faith that what we have coming up is going to be energetic and entertaining, so that we can bring more people in and enjoy the vocabulary and the aesthetics of Cantonese opera. I end with just this picture for nostalgic reasons. Thank you very much.
Okay, this opera is mainly on the contribution of the activities of young Canadians, young Chinese Canadians. So without them, I think it would be very difficult to repeal the law. And the pastime, I searched, so they do sport, but they also do dancing, swing dancing, maybe the Lindy Hop. So maybe I would like to have this opera as a community endeavor. Everybody chip in. We will sign up some dancing classes, or maybe we will hold some dancing classes to learn the swing dance. So, Jacky, okay, you have to learn. Everybody has to learn, because we might need extras on our stage. When we have the dancing, maybe everybody should come and join us to dance on stage. Okay, so in the employment is before the repeal of the law, nobody is allowed to be a lawyer. Even if they took the degree, one of the very famous Chinese Canadian, he took the degree in the States, but they refused to let him practice, not even as a notary public. But after the repeal, he furthered his study and became a lawyer in Toronto. So this Exclusion Act actually is kind of like an experiment for the younger kids. So they give them the aspiration, the goal to go forward, to work harder. So the Second World War in 1939, and because Chinese Canadians were not allowed to enlist as in the army, so they had a lot of debate in the St. Kitts Theatre. Like some of them say, why should we care? We were second-class citizen. Nobody considered us Canadians. Why should we care? And then the other group might say, well, this is our country. I'm a Chinese Canadian. I'm a Canadian. We should fight. If after the war, you still try to protest that we were being discriminated, and then people will ask you, where were you when we were in war? So there were two parties arguing. And then there was a third party, is the parents. Because at that time, Chinese was very difficult. And no women were allowed into the Canada. So only limited mothers. So children to them were very precious. How could I let my children go to war? They might be killed. Then we don't have anyone to pass down the family. So the third party is the parent. But of course, eventually, the younger people who wanted to be enlisted, they went forward. And then when they went to try to get registered, they were told, no, we don't need you, you are Chinese. Then only until 1944, when the Japanese declared war, and then when the British talked to the Canadian government, said we need some of the Canadian, like the Asia, who looked Asia, not the Westerner, to be inside in Southeast Asia as some kind of guerrilla or something. So that's why then they said, oh, we've received phone call from the government, said that you could come and join the army.
I think one of the most horrifying experiences that we Chinese Canadian had to undergo was the fact that even though we were born in Canada, the Canadian government did not recognize us as being Canadian citizens. I was born in Victoria in 1924, and under the immigration regulations existing at that time, my father had to register my birth with the Canadian immigration authorities. He did so, and he was given a certificate which confirmed that I had been born in Victoria, but at the bottom of that certificate were the words, "This certificate conveys no legal status on the above." Now, you can imagine how I felt when I found out that even though I was born in Canada, I was deemed to be a non-person in the eyes of the Canadian government. If anybody mentioned the word Chinaman to a Canadian, that Canadian would automatically conjure up visions of a cook, a houseboy, a waiter, a farmer, a laundryman, but never a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, or any other professional type of person. Some of us realize that unless we volunteered to serve Canada during its hour of need, we would be in a very difficult position after the war ended to demand our rights as Canadian citizens, because the Canadian government would say to us, what did you do during the war? When everybody else was off fighting for Canada, what did you do? This British officer asked me if I would volunteer, and when you're age 19, you don't think very much about what you're volunteering for, but we volunteered, and he asked me if I knew of any other Chinese Canadian veterans. I happened to know all of them because there were so few of us at that time. And so within a matter of 24 hours, they were all ordered to report to Vancouver. We volunteered for an operation called Operation Oblivion. This was a operation mounted by the British War Ministry under the auspices of Special Operations Executive, which is the same branch that did all the clandestine operations behind German lines in France, dropping Allied agents in for sabotage, espionage, and things like that.
Well, I didn't know anything about it until I start researching the history. But I think everything starts with a dream. Doesn't matter it's a big dream or small dream. For me, my dream is like whenever I go to bed, I won't be able to go to sleep that fast because I will be thinking, I will be dreaming, what am I going to do? Like the prop master's dream, I was dreaming. Maybe this time we are not going to have narrations between acts. I'm going to have rapping. So I was dreaming, where am I? Where could I find a rapper? Then one time, that was after I had this idea, then maybe weeks later, we had a reunion with what the alumni of our high school schoolmates. 50 years, never met. I never met the lady sitting next to me, but she was in the same school. So I started telling her about the prop master stream, and I said, I'm looking for a rapper. Oh, my son is a rapper. And he's a Chinese-Canadian rapper. So that is Jerry Song. He stole the show. And he was fantastic. And he loved to learn. So I told him what we should do this, we should do this. And I told him, maybe you should use face painting. But because when you use face painting, if you really do face painting with all the paint, you cannot change. I said, how about use the mask? So right away, he searched the Amazon, and he got 2 different masks. And he asked me, which one do you like? Oh, I said, this one, the colorful one. So I told him. And also in one of the scenes, I said, you are the death. So you came to take this, like the Guan Wakun's father is dying, so you are the death. So you should, with your back facing the audience, and then you will turn dramatic. So that's some of the things that I add in. That was when I was dreaming, not really dreaming, when I was lying on my bed. And then I also said, okay, this time we should make more action in the opera. So we put in the fighting scenes, and we put in the kicking of the spears. So lots of my audience sitting in the audience, they thought, what happened if she missed it? Okay, well, that was what I worried too. But we practiced and practiced, so only one, okay? Usually, if you practice 100%, you might only get 80% on stage. Okay, so let's go forward. So I'm going to show you, Peter Tam is our composer, but he is having a holiday in Whistler. So he recorded a message for us to tell us about how he's composing.
Hi, I'm Peter, and I'll be doing some composition for The Awakening, working with Rosa and Stephen and Leo. The work that we've been doing is trying to put together Chinese music with contemporary beats and just a whole mishmash of things, and that's how fusion comes in. Sometimes things fit together and sometimes they don't, but hopefully, you know, we're with Awakening, we're taking some new ideas because it takes place in the 50s, so we're thinking about incorporating some swing beats and creating music that we can have a whole chorus singing, which is kind of something different that we're doing to Cantonese opera. Cantonese opera usually don't have multiple singers singing at the same time. There's no chorus. You have a lot of actors on stage, but not so much. It's always just one person singing at one time. And a lot of the melody are, well, first of all, the melodies are mostly pentonic, but and a lot of times the voices are all in unison with whether the instruments or everything else is all kind of in unison. And sometimes the instrument starts off and you have and the singing comes in. and sometimes it picks up with, there's a little bit of a standard I notice. It goes, those are some of the notes that get played on the erhu, that starts off the melodies for the actor to sing. So how do we incorporate that into swing jazz? That's a little bit of swing, but I'm trying to add some more stuff to it, like even a little bit of a hip hop. So swing and hip hop. So here's I'm working on a little recording here. I'll show it to you. It's one of the songs that I just put some ideas down. It's called "Show Me." This is when William's trying to, get the rest of the crew all roused up about taking step, standing up for themselves, and so I wrote a song called "Show Me what are you afraid of? Show me what you're made of," and turn that into like a chorus, which is something completely different than Cantonese opera. Again, the song requires a whole bunch of people singing, and there's a lot of harmonies. It's nothing like, it kind of goes really far away from Cantonese opera, but hopefully we can get still use some of the instrument, and mixing up, even maybe a swing jazz bass or something like that. So here, I'll play a little bit for you. I don't know if you can hear it. Show me, what are you made of? Show me, what are you afraid of? Every day, every hour, you got your consequences of life. Don't give in to complicity. Stand up and fight. So it's a little bit of trying to get the crowd going type of music. Stand up and fight. So it's just that the beats are, it's a hip hop beat, and I don't know if you notice a little bit of walking, like a swing bass, and of course incorporating brass and horn section, because a lot of the songs back in those times, it's mostly all horns, like the Glenn Miller Band. So right now we're still playing around with different ideas, putting some of the music in. It may or may not work, but this is how fusions all come about. And these are just right now my own idea, but what I'm hoping to do is to, as time goes on, we're going to run some more workshops, get more people involved, and hopefully with a different instrument, just to try out, see how different instrument can sound with it, and playing the beat, and see if it can be followed, and see if people can sing it. So it's trial and error, and that's what fusion's all about. So hope that you can, we're looking for people to help get involved, and the more ideas, the better. and it don't have to know anything about Cantonese opera. I don't. I started with Prop Master's Dream and start learning about the different instruments. So I'm hoping to write some of the music, even like some of those the slower music. There's going to be a lot of pieces where it's going to be slow enough so you can hear the conversation, and it's going to be in both Chinese, Cantonese, and English. Taking some of those notes and creating something with it. Well, we're still in work in progress. So hope that you can stick with us and maybe participate, join in the chorus, and we're welcoming a lot of different ideas because even though I have a lot of experience writing songs, but right now I'm experimenting with different things, Chinese instruments, and not just instrumentation, but mixing all these different styles of swing jazz and hip hop, and I don't know, it may not work, but it's and then sometimes I think what I'm doing now too is I got the tools, throw everything in there and see what doesn't fit well, and just take it out and see how that goes. So I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of insight of what we're doing with Awakening. And like I said, I hope you can get a chance to get involved. Okay.
I think it's very exciting for fusion opera. Cantonese opera the repertoire of Cantonese opera is always sad story. Like the princess died and they got all killed, and very sad story. But fusion opera is different. I can learn swing dancing, I can learn jazz singing, and we can learn different songs. So we are looking forward to this one. But for this one, compared to the Prop Master's Dream, is different. Because Prop Master's Dream is a real life story. I knew the person. But this one is a whole new story, and I have to dive into it and put myself in it, learn the swing dance and everything. Okay, now I would like to introduce to you the Chinese opera composer in Hong Kong.
大家好，我係嚟自香港嘅李霆鋒。咁今次咧，亦都係我第2次參與燕鳳鳴劇團嘅新編粵劇啦。咁上一次咧就係呢一個道具大師的尋根夢。咁今次咧亦都會係有一個新嘅粵劇，就係 Awakening。咁我哋呢兩個粵劇其實我哋都有一個相似之處嘅，就係同一般傳統粵劇咧係有分別嘅。我哋傳統粵劇通常都係會以古代嘅故事啦，或者係才子佳人啦，去做背景去講述一啲故事。但係我哋呢兩個嘅戲咧，呢兩個嘅新戲咧，其實係會以加拿大家籍華人嚟做背景去取材翻一啲故事出嚟。咁希望大家睇嘅時候有更加多嘅共鳴啦。咁上一次我哋就係以關華坤嚟做一個故事背景，講述佢喺加拿大嚟到加拿大嘅時候點樣奮鬥，點樣去成為一個喺粵劇舞台上面嘅不可多得嘅功臣啦。咁而今次咧，我哋係會將個背景咧再放大啲，咁就係會以家籍華人喺加拿大奮鬥嘅成個華人叫做組織啦。 咁樣喺加拿大奮鬥嘅歷史嚟嘅。咁當中亦都牽涉到係喺當年價值華人受到一啲不平等嘅對待啦，佢哋點樣去忍耐，然後先有今時今日喺加拿大社會嘅地位啦。咁我相信呢一個戲咧係會令到大家產生好多共鳴啦，同埋可能會對價值華人嘅歷史咧會有更加大嘅認識嘅。咁希望大家會喜歡呢套戲。
Leo is a very young Chinese opera composer, Cantonese opera composer. He was trained very young when he started at 6 or 7 years old, and he followed a very famous Cantonese opera artist in Hong Kong. When he graduated from high school, he went to study in the States and had a degree. I don't know what he took. But then when he went back to Hong Kong, he never, his passion is Cantonese opera. So he went back after meeting his wife. His wife is also a Cantonese opera artist. So they married, and then now he is full-time in Cantonese opera as a composer and as an artist. So once you fell in love, you never leave. Okay, so now I would like to introduce our Jacky Lam. Jacky was the Guan Wa Quan in our prop master stream. So Jacky, you're going to say something? Okay, so last time, come on here, out here. Jacky always very quiet in all our events, but he told me he came here over 30 years ago, and he took English at that time, but because he bought a business in Crystal Mall, from then on, everything is Chinese. So he forgot his English, and then he told me last time that maybe a few months ago that he's taking English course in the Vancouver Central Library. Oh, I said, oh, okay, you have to speak. I have written a very short speech for him a month ago, so he's practicing. Come on.
Okay. I know my English is not so good. Yeah, I want to try. And Rosa said, let me try it. Yeah, I do my best. So hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Jacky Lam. I'm excited to play James in our upcoming opera, The Awakening. James is a young Chinese Canadian from late 1930s and early 1940s who fought against unfair laws to recognize as a true Canadian. Many young Chinese Canadians were eager to contribute to the war effort during this time. Despite facing discrimination, in portraying James, I aim to show his bravery and dedication to justice. His story unfolds during a crucial period in Vancouver's Chinatown, where the community united to assert their place in Canadian society. The Awakening combines Cantonese opera, Western jazz, and modern theater to tell a story that's both historically significant and relevant today. James' journey is one of courage and resilience, and I'm committed to bringing his character to life authentically. Thank you for supporting this project. I look forward to sharing James' journey with you all. Thank you.
Okay. I think, people say Cantonese is difficult, but I think any language is easy if you speak every day. Like for me, I came here in 1975, but because I speak mainly Cantonese at home, and I'm in Cantonese opera, so my friends are all Cantonese. So even now when I speak English, it's like shifting gear when you drive. Have you ever tried a non-automatic car? So you have to shift gear, Chinese, shift gear, English. So you can hear that I mix up his, him, her. So still difficult for me not to talk about Jacky, right? So I will keep learning myself too. Okay, now I would like to invite our guest speaker, Shelley. Come on now, Shelley.
Okay, I'm born and raised in Vancouver, BC. My father, Sidney Wong, is a Chinese war veteran. He served in the Canadian Army during World War II. Now, growing up in Vancouver's very own Chinatown, I attended both Strathcona Elementary School and the Chinese Public School. After completing high school, I studied secretarial courses at Vancouver College and worked at BC Hydro for a number of years before I got married and had a family, 2 sons and a daughter. This story is about our father, Sudi, otherwise known as Sidney Wong. He was born in 1914 in Thai Kai Li village, Hoi Ping, Guangdong, China. It's Thai Kai Li, Hoi Ping, Guangdong, Zhongguo. In 1923, he immigrated to Vancouver at the age of 8 with his father, Kong Soon Wong. Both of them were subjected to paying the $500 head tax. This is a copy of the head tax. Now on it, it says that to pay $500. He was 8 years old and indicated which village in China he was from. He arrived on the Empress of Asia, the liner at that time, and it was dated August 10, 1923. Now back in China, this was photos of his village. And I believe the house on the top right-hand corner was their house. The back of the head tax document shows re-entries into Canada. It's 3 entries. The first one was in 1931, 1934, and the final one was 1947. And that was the year that he brought his family over after the war. This photo shows his family in China, my grandfather, my grandmother, my oldest sister, and her husband, and their young daughter. From 1932 to 1935, my dad worked as a dishwasher, house cleaner, and truck driver. Between 1935 and 1943, he was a clerk in his father's retail tobacco store in Vancouver's Chinatown. We still remember going down there, spending some time, and going through their confectionery for treats. This picture, I'm not sure where it was taken, but I see he's very well dressed, and I see he's got some pinups in the background. That radio looks a lot like the one that Rosa showed earlier. I believe she's looking for one for the show. Now, in this photo, it shows my father with his father-in-law, who also paid the head tax when he came. My dad attended the Mount Pleasant School in Vancouver and left school at the age of 15 with a grade 4 level public education. He then took a 6-month English night school course. Later on, in 1942, he took a 3-month welding course at Vancouver Technical School. From 1943 to 1944, he worked as a welder in the North Vancouver shipyard repair. The pay then was 98 cents an hour. In 1944, at age 31, he voluntarily enlisted in the Canadian Army despite the prohibition on Chinese Canadians serving in the armed forces. He was part of Force 136, which was mentioned earlier by Rosa. It was a convert branch of the British Special Operations Executive, otherwise known as SOE. He operated behind enemy lines in Japanese-occupied Southeast Asia. He received training in various combat skills, and his primary operations took place in Burma, now known as Myanmar. He endured harsh conditions and numerous dangers while carrying out his mission. His service included gathering intelligence, disrupting enemy supply lines, and liaising with local resistance. Here he is among his comrades. And another photo of the group, and even a larger group. In 1945, Ottawa repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which had banned Chinese immigration to Canada since 1923. In March 1946, the Director of Repatriation of the Department of National Defense sent him a letter. Now, the contents of that letter in part reads, "As you have dependents overseas who may be entitled to free passage to Canada under the provisions of the Canadian Army Routine Order 4862, it is desired to have all records in order at this end." Now, this letter allowed him to bring his family from China to Canada. This letter was very important to my father. He was naturalized as a British subject in 1946 and honorably discharged on May 1st, 1946, with the rank of corporal. For his service, he was awarded the Burma Star, Canadian Volunteer Service Medal, and General Service Badge. We're very proud to show you this. Unfortunately, we couldn't open the back of the shadow box to polish the medals. After the war, he came to Canada with the family, which at that time was only my brother, because my sister had already married. So she didn't come. She was, I believe, in Hong Kong with our grandmother. So in this picture, it shows my mom and my dad, my oldest brother on your far right, and then the 5 children that were born in Canada, or actually in Vancouver after the war. In 1947, the government of British Columbia granted Chinese citizens the right to vote. And again, it just shows the pictures of the whole family here, taken in 1953. Now, despite the challenges of feeding a family of 7 and paying a mortgage, Dad worked tirelessly as a husband and father. He would supplement family earnings by fishing, smelt fishing. He would go out early in the morning, catch the fish, bring it home, prepare it, and then he would have the children go down to Chinatown to sell the fish on the street. It was sold for 25 cents a pound or 5 pounds for $1. And that supplemented some of the earnings. His resources enabled him to build a swing set and teeter-totter in the backyard for his children. Now, raising 5 children is not easy. You have to keep them in tow. So we were in the backyard a lot. Here it shows a picture of his the oldest son's wedding in 1959. Among the children in the picture is my oldest sister on your far right with his daughter and his son. We were a growing family. Following his discharge, Dad purchased an antique store in the Dunbar area, which he operated as a photo developing and printing studio and selling novelties. He also had a black room in the house that he used for the same. He worked as a laborer and a cook at Royal Canadian Air Force bases in Comox and Kitsilano before being employed as a cook at Vancouver General Hospital, where he worked until his retirement in 1979. Now, Dad was very creative. He challenged himself. He took a 1954 Chevrolet sedan, removed the trunk lid, the back seat, and built an extension with a roof for more space. Don't think it's allowed now. It served as a sleeping area for overnight smelt fishing trips. I thought that was pretty clever. I also remember sitting, maybe not this vehicle, but there was a vehicle where we all went for a picnic. And because seatbelts weren't a mandatory thing then, he would take folding camping stools, put them in the back, and we would be sitting on those as extra seats on the trip out there. Now, Dad's interests included tennis, swimming, fishing, movies, dancing, reading, and photography. His creativity and resourcefulness were evident in projects like building a boat in his garage, a family endeavor that involved late nights and weekends of hammering, sawing, and gluing, resulting in both celebration and anticipation at each phase. He was an active member of the Ming Sun Benevolent Society and the Chinese Benevolent Association, contributing to the community and advocating for Chinese immigrants' rights in Canada. He played a crucial role in gaining the right to vote for Chinese Canadians, opening doors to education and career opportunities. He was a devoted father, instilled strong values of education, responsibility, and respect to the children. He was also an active member of the Army, Navy, and Air Force Veterans of Canada, Pacific Unit 280. This picture was taken during one of the Remembrance Day assemblies down at Victory Square, Santa Path. Beyond his war service, Dad was a devoted father, and his legacy extends beyond his family and community, leaving a lasting impression on the political landscape and advancing the rights of Chinese Canadians. Here he's celebrating his birthday with 7 of the 9 grandchildren. And as a tribute to Dad, 1914 to 2007, in honor of his unwavering dedication, bravery, and contributions to both his family and community, this photo album celebrates the life and legacy of Mr. Wong. His resilience and determination paved the way for future generations, and his story remains an inspiration to us all. Thank you for joining us in remembering and honoring his remarkable journey. Thank you. One last remark I want to make. Paying the head tax was a financial burden on any Chinese that had to pay it. Although it's not a lot of money these days, $500, or roughly the equivalent of 2 years in wages at the time, left a very bitter taste. In a letter dated October 2006 to Dad, on behalf from Prime Minister Stephen Harper and Canada's new government office, and I quote, "It offered a full apologies to Chinese Canadians for the head tax, along with the delivery of ex gratia payments." The letter also reads, to give substantial meaning to the apology, an ex gratia symbolic payment is being made to you in recognition of the stigma and hardship you endured. The redress was a check for $20,000. Some official from the Secretary of State wanted Dad, among others, to have a photo op receiving the check. Dad refused, saying it was nothing more than a political stunt to get reelected. Thank you.